Okay, so picking up where we left off, we're going to start with number 21. On 21, they instruct us to use the quadratic formula. I'm trying to grab a pen. Let's use this one because it erases. So let's go ahead and write that out. So we'd have 4x squared plus 10x subtract 6 equals 0. And we're going to plug that into the quadratic formula. So first let's get our a. Our b is 10 and our c is -6, and we'll plug that into this. So we have a negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared subtract 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So we'd get a -10 plus or minus the square root of 100 subtract 4 times 4 is 16 times a -6 would be 96. I know this because I just recorded or thought I recorded this and I had not. I used a calculator previously, but we're going to keep continuing. So -10 plus or minus the square root of 196 all over 8. The square root of 196 is 14. Then we can reduce this because 2 goes into both of these. We could have factored our 2 out up here as well. So we're going to have -5 over 4. And then we'll set these both up. So I'd have a -5 plus 7 divided by 4. I'd have a -5 subtract 7 divided by 4. So this one, -5 plus 7, will give us a +2 over 4, which would reduce to 1/2. -5 subtract 7 would give us a -12 over 4, which would give us a -3. So our answer would be -3 and 1/2. And that is -3 positive 1/2. Okay. Find the real solution of the equation. So on these, just like our homework, just be sure you remember to check them. So the inverse of the square root would be to square this. So we're going to square both sides. So that would get rid of our square root. So we'd have 8x plus 9 equals 81. And then we'd solve, so subtract 9. And we'd have 8x equals 72. And we would divide by 8. So x would equal 9. And if we check that, 9 times 8 is 72, plus 9 is 81, and the square root of 81 is 9. So this is good. And I'm going to do 22 right here. So let's go ahead and mark our answer. So we have the square root of x plus 1 equals 8. So first, and I'm going to write the step under it this time, x plus 1 squared equals 8 squared. So we'd have x plus 1 equals 8 squared is 64. Subtract our 1. X equals 63. 63 plus 1 is 64. The square root of 64 is 8. That one works. 22 is 63, or heard 22 twice. My brain is so fried today. Then we got the long one. So 24, I'll write the right number. The square root of 16x subtract 32 equals x plus 2. So I'm going to rewrite it. X subtract 32 equals x plus 2. When we go to square this side, remember that we have to square all of this. It's not going to be x squared plus 4. It's going to be FOILed out. So on this side we have 16x subtract 32 equals, and I'll write it out, times x plus 2. This is the step people forget. X squared plus 2x plus 2x plus 4. Because we're distributing this, x times x, x times 2, 2 times x, and 2 times 2. So we have 16x subtract 32 equals, and I'm going to combine these two terms, x squared plus 4x plus 4. Now then, since we have x squared, we have a quadratic equation, so we need to make this equation equal to 0. Since my x squared is on this side, and I don't want to deal with a negative x squared, I'm going to move everything to the side with x squared. So now then we have 0 on this side equals x squared. 4 subtract 16 would be negative 12x. 32 plus 4 is 36. Factors of 36 that multiply and then add to get 12 would be 6 and 6, because this is a perfect square. So we'd have x, and since it's subtract here, I'm going to write 6 and 6 over here. So it'd be x subtract 6 times x subtract 6. But they're both the same, so I'm only going to work out one of them. Add 6, we get x equals 6. We need to check this. So on this side, when we put 6 in, we'd get 8. I'll write it down here. I do not know what 16 times 6 is. I know this is 8. 16 times 6. It's 96. I guess I should have known that. 96 subtract 32 would give us the square root of 64, and the square root of 64 is 8, so this is good. So our answer is x equals 6. Okay, the profit derived from the sale of X video cameras is $370 per unit, less the sum of $2,400 cost plus $140 per unit. The profit derived, so the profit derived, P equals, from the sale of X video cameras, $370 per unit less. So 370 times X. So we're not dividing by the profit. If it says per, we're going to multiply. Per unit less the sum. So we're going to have a subtract here because less the sum of 2,400 plus cost per unit. That one has subtract. Just work your way through this. When you get to it in the first place, go ahead and mark the signs you know. Derived from is going to be our equal sign. The profit derived from P equals, but they all have that per unit. So if I have anything per, we're multiplying it by our unknown, which is that X. So per unit, 370X, not divided by. And then it tells us less, so I know that these all have our subtracts, so that's why this one wasn't there. And so less the sum of, since it was less the, whenever they have the, they usually want us to group things together. The sum of 2,400 cost plus, I guess that plus would really narrow it down to these two. But just be sure to pay attention when you're reading through that and go from the front to the end. And it'll help you knock things out. All right, imaginary numbers. So remember the trick about where do I want to write it? square root of -1 equals I. I squared equals -1. You will never have an I squared in your answer. I cubed equals a -I, and I to the 4th power equals 1. When you're dividing these, if we have a remainder of 1 or 0.25, it's an I. Remainder of 2 or 0.5, it's -1. Remainder of 3 or 0.75, it's a -I, and this one has no remainder. All that for this problem. Okay, so I to the 8th, 4 goes into 8 evenly, so it's +1. Here we're going to combine our like terms, so 8, since it's a plus sign right here, if it was subtract, I'd have to change my sign here. But 8 plus 5 is 13, 13, 13, -13, and 3. And then -6i plus 4i would be a -2i. Here we're going to have to FOIL. I'm looking for a blank piece of paper on my desk. It's pretty harder than I thought it would be. I guess I can mark it out on the bottom of this one. So we're going to go ahead and write this out so that we can FOIL it. So we'd have 49 subtract 14i subtract 14i, negative times a negative plus 4i squared. We'd combine our like terms here. So we're going to have 49 subtract 28i plus 4i squared. I squared equals -1. It will not be in your answer. Is that one of their options? Yeah, this is not it. I squared is not part of the answer. We didn't get rid of I, so that isn't either. Okay, so then when we multiply by this, 49 subtract 28i plus 4 times -1 would make this a -4. And then we do 49 subtract 4 to get 45 subtract 28i. Kind of cut it off there. Oh wait, right here. Fill in the blank with the correct inequality symbol. First of all, if it's less than or greater than and it doesn't have an equal to sign, it's not magically going to get one. So it's not these two. If it's not equal to here, it's not going to become equal to. That happened a lot. Okay, so since we have x is less than -2, they went ahead and moved the 2. We added 2. So we have x plus 2 is less than 0. The only time the sign changes is if we divide by a negative or multiply by a negative. We just added. So the sign does not change, and it's D. Last problem. Express the graph shown using interval notation. Also express it as an inequality involving x. So this one right here has an equal to, and this one is just a parentheses. We're looking for the one that has bracket 3, 9 parentheses. That is all of the test review. If y'all have any questions over this, please email me. I'm going to scan this test and get it uploaded for y'all. Bye.